everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here at Mold Talks. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Sara. Sara, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to visit us at Mold Talks here and share your story. I know that this is not an easy thing to rehash, but I really appreciate you doing this and standing up and kind of showing people that this is really real. This is impactful to so many people. And, thank you for kind of helping raise awareness around that. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let people know why you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you today. And like you said, to share. So my name is Sara Gerbracht. I am actually a health coach. And I've been in the health industry, fitness, weight loss for over 12 years. And really this journey of, mycotoxins and mold has just really helped me recognize that, one, I was not alone. And if you are struggling with something like this, you are not alone. And it is something that we can, really get together and help each other and figure out what is really going on in your body, if it is mold or mycotoxins.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I love what you just said. I mean, the idea is we're trying to build a community here of people that understand that they're not alone, that there is millions of people that are experiencing this, and some of which don't even know what it yet is that they're experiencing. And hopefully this series can kind of highlight that. Let's dive right in. When was it that you first started realizing, you're not feeling well, you're not quite yourself?
Yeah. So mine was looking back, once I figured out what it was, I had to look back and look at the timeline. And for me, it was actually anxiety that I had never experienced before. So my son has played hockey since he was little, and he's now a teenager and old, but I was at one of his games and I had extreme fear about him getting hurt. And when, that's a real thing, in hockey, but he'd played for years. And so I was like, why am I feeling so anxious about this? And so that was really where I started to notice like the anxiousness, the anxiety was different than I'd ever experienced before. So that was really where it started, and just recognizing that this isn't normal to me.
Yeah, and anxiety obviously is a big deal when it comes to environmental exposures. When exactly was this? About how long ago?
So that was about a year and a half ago now.
Okay.
Actually, no, 2 years, just November.
2 years this November. Okay.
Yep.
So we're coming up on 2 years. And
Yep.
So how did you first figure out that it was mold that was causing this? So you figured out that you weren't feeling well 2 years ago. How long did it take from that point forward to figuring out that it was actually mold?
So it was about 5 months later, I had continued to have different symptoms. Anxiety was the first one, but forgetfulness was another one, like extreme forgetfulness. And so it was about 5 months later that I actually went to a natural practitioner, and she was able to do some testing and actually then diagnosed me, or I don't know if she diagnosed me, but, said it was then a mycotoxin. And that's how we figured out that was affecting those, 5 months of symptoms, but it could have been longer. It could have been longer than that too. That's just when I really remember like a really hard timeline.
Yeah, and I think you got lucky because I mean I've dealt with so many people who've taken years to really figure out what's going on. So glad that you found someone so early on that can help point you in the right direction. Let's dive into this forgetfulness, just because brain fog and forgetfulness is a big common symptom. But I would love to highlight, the real seriousness of this forgetfulness, because I think it's not so much of kind of like losing train of thought, although obviously that's a big deal. But can you walk through a scenario of forgetfulness just to kind of highlight really the severity and the difference between this and like just having an off day?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest stories that comes to mind is we were actually in Mexico for a work function, and we were at this huge resort. And so I'm actually there's a lot of things I'm not good at, but I am really good at with the direction.
Okay.
And so it was a huge resort. And it was the second time that I was there. And so I knew it pretty well. But we had gotten back and I literally could not remember what room number my number was, but also where my room was, which building it was. And my phone was dead. Like it had like literally 3% left on it. and I was calling my boyfriend and he wasn't answering. And I literally was putting my key in the wrong room numbers for probably 10, 15 minutes. And I finally got a hold of him and he's like, "You're in the wrong building." And for me, it was just like, okay, that's weird. That's not something that I normally, it's kind of funny now, but it's not something that I normally would do. And I had been telling people the wrong room number all week and didn't even notice it. And so that was for me, I was scared. I was scared that I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't find my room. And it was just so unlike me to feel that way that I was like, I can't even remember my room number. Like I remember thinking, this is not right. This is not just silly. It's really my brain not functioning properly. It's scary.
Yeah, I would imagine I would be scared if I'm disoriented in a random country, especially at a place that I'm familiar with, and I'm like drawing a blank on where I'm at, and I'm trying to get home, and nobody's answering me. That's scary. So I'm glad that you were able to get in touch with your boyfriend at the time and able to get back to your place safely. But yeah, that's a great way to highlight forgetfulness, because it's totally different the way people would think. You're not just like forgetting someone's birthday. I mean, you're really, the brain fog really can be detrimental. A lot of my clients, they talk about going from doctor to doctor, doctor to doctor, sometimes doctor to doctor. I've had people that have gone to 40 plus doctors. It sounds like you really found someone early on that kind of knew what they were doing and knew what to look for. So this may not be as relatable to you, but it's very interesting because we take 20,000 breaths per day, and it's almost the last place people look in terms of optimizing their health or trying to diagnose complex issues. And when these contaminants come into contact with our body, it really causes inflammation, and inflamed gut, inflamed brain, that's enough to cause chronic disease. So it's really interesting that you found someone so early on. But how was that experience like? Did you end up Googling? Did you talk to friends and family to get connected with this doctor? How did that journey go for you?
It was actually a friend of mine who I had previously seen her for another set of symptoms. And so it was actually her that through a friend, and she had already been on like the natural functional medicine, healing the body from within, finding the root cause. So yes, I feel very fortunate that I didn't go the natural, or I shouldn't say the natural, but the regular medical doctor route, because I had already familiarized myself with that. But I do believe had I gone to the doctor, it would have been, or a regular medical doctor, it would have been more of suppressing those symptoms versus finding out what really is going on in my body.
Yeah, it's a really good way to put it. Traditional medicine, that's really kind of what it does. It's, and obviously there's a perfect cases for traditional medicine, but in a lot of what we're seeing, the traditional medicine route isn't looking at, these types of root causes such as environmental exposures. And it's unfortunately leaving people without the answers that they need to actually correct the situation and move forward. So again, I'm really glad that you were able to be connected with somebody so early on that can help really get down to this. What were your symptoms like? We talked about forgetfulness. What were some of the other symptoms that started to develop as time went on?
Well, the interesting thing is that it was more brain oriented. So the anxiety, the forgetfulness. I was even taking a boxing class, and I'd never done it before, but boxing does sequences. And so we were doing it, it was more for exercise, and we were doing the sequences, and I could not remember them. I could not do like A, B, B, C, and again, they were like, "You're just being too hard on yourself." I'm like, no, I should be able to get these. This is something that I, am familiar with. And so it was more of that brain orientation with me, but then it was also the being really tired, being really fatigued, And again, it snuck up on me. So like, I want to say slowly that I didn't really know, but then kind of thinking hindsight in Mexico, I remember smelling our room being a little musty.
Mm.
And I think that I had already had it, but it just kind of like exacerbated the symptoms so much by being in that room that it was very, for me, it was, a lot of brain oriented.
Yeah, and it can have a compounding effect, right? The more you have this toxicity accumulate inside the body, the worse it gets, and it starts to really create these compounding symptoms. Okay, so you had a lot of brain fog, a lot of that, and then obviously the anxiety too that we touched on earlier. What was that like besides like getting worried about your son? I mean, did you have days where you woke up and it was you had deep dark thoughts? I mean, if you could kind of highlight that part of it, that'd be great, because so many people, they get turned away from doctors and they say, you have to go see a psychiatrist. And obviously you could go see a psychiatrist, you can get on these programs, but if you're still living inside the problem, I don't think it's really going to solve much other than suppressing symptoms like we touched on earlier. Can you highlight some of the anxiety issues that you dealt with, and kind of how you were able to recognize that it was not natural?
Yeah, I do remember thinking a lot of like, what is wrong with me? Like, what is going on? And like, in a sense of like, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to, as a health coach myself, let's eat healthy, let's exercise. And it was way beyond that. It was way beyond like just the normal kind of like healthy things that we do. It was more serious in the sense of like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to fix it. Therefore, how do you have hope? How do you
Yeah.
have hope if you don't know if you don't even know what it is? And so those thoughts were pretty scary in a sense of like, is this just what normal aging is?
Yeah.
Even though I knew it wasn't. It was scary. And it is a sense of like, I don't know, has anybody experienced this before? Because nobody I had ever heard of had really talked about it. And, really, once I started diving into like the symptoms, it was just like, okay, these thoughts of like, there isn't hope or what is wrong with me are pretty normal because it is just so unnormal.
Right. Yeah, it's normal to have those things when you're experiencing this, but obviously you saw a shift. Like you didn't normally have those thoughts before you were in mold, right?
Right.
So you saw this shift, and as it comes over you, you're trying to figure it out. And I think that's where a lot of the hopelessness comes from, because we're all sentient beings, right? We're trying to figure out what's going on. Something's different. We're noticing that, but we don't have answers. And so that mystery kind of really causes some confusion, and really puts us in a dark place. And I totally understand, what that can entail. And I appreciate you kind of sharing that with us, because I know it's traumatizing to kind of go through those experiences. Um, how did it impact your life and being able to do like just your everyday normal activities?
I was able to keep up a lot of my normal everyday activities just by scheduling everything. Like anything I had on my plate was on my calendar, like literally picking up my son from any place, of course, so I didn't forget him. But putting everything in my calendar, because if it was not in there, I was probably going to forget it. And then, just I was able to, I worked from home already. So thankfully, I just have to say, thankfully, I already worked from home because I was able to then make my own schedule. But I really do believe that if I had to actually, go to a previous job that I had at, early in the morning, I don't know if I would have been able to wake up. I don't know. I slept a lot. I was tired a lot. Really working from home and through the computer, as luckily was able to kind of, work through some of that, but there was a lot of taking naps in between. And like I said, had I been working a regular job, I would have not been able to
Yeah.
do that. And I think I would have been able to just see the detriments a lot more in that area. But yet at the same time, I did notice, how tired I was and how like just moody maybe is a good word. Again, different than a normal everyday type of situation of just there was things that I was normal, like stress that I was normally able to manage and handle, where I just found myself really overwhelmed. And again, looking back, I had to kind of go backwards that was it, but recognizing that, okay, overwhelm in a sense can be normal, except for when it's part of your normal everyday life that you're not able to handle some of those things. So I think really just the tiredness and the fogginess and those things were the biggest detriment to what my daily life looked like.
And then just like on top of that, would you say, for instance, did you feel yourself during this time period, or did you feel, different than you normally felt?
Very different. Yeah. And that was probably the biggest thing where my thoughts would be like, what was wrong with me? Because when you don't feel like yourself and you don't know how to fix it, it's scary. And I
Yeah.
remember there were days where I just would be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Is there something that I need to fix? Is there something that I need to do? But yet when I didn't know how to do it, is very, very fear-based then, fear-driven. And again, that's not normal for me. And so it was something where I was just like, I don't know how to get back to myself. I don't know how to feel normal again. I don't know how to feel some of those things. And I felt very alone because nobody that I was talking to really understood that. And again, you don't really talk about it a lot if you're going to be looked at like you're a little bit crazy.
Yeah, no, you're right. Did you ever talk to this about any, with anybody like such as friends and family?
I did a little bit, but when they don't understand, it's a
Mm,
little bit hard. And so I didn't very much, honestly. I talked to God about it a lot, but I
yeah.
really, really, it wasn't something that is very common, even in my health and fitness industry. It's getting more and more out in the open, but like with the work you do, which is so amazing, but it's not commonly talked about and commonly known.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I've heard, some real horror stories of people opening up to their friends and family and not really being accepted. It's a very misunderstood topic. For instance, I've heard some people say like that they were accused of being lazy. When they were dealing with chronic fatigue. There's a difference between being lazy and literally not being able to get out of bed. And so it's really hard to hear these types of things. And I hope with this Mold Talk series, as more and more people share their story, and people can see like how many people this affects. Maybe we can get society to start listening and start accepting people when they say they don't feel well, and when they are looking for root causes. And things like air quality should really be identified more, because we take 20,000 breaths per day. We're consuming more air than water and food, and so water and food are typically not enough when you're dealing with such poor air quality. um and did at any point did you ever blame yourself, like did you ever feel that there's something wrong with you, that you were the problem?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially, with me, I talk about with food with my clients every day. And so same thing of like, did I do something wrong? Did I not eat something right? Did I not do something right? And until I actually figured out it was exterior, it was, yeah, what did I do wrong? How could I let this happen to me? For me, it was something like, how did this happen to me? And feeling like I was myself was to blame, and that I was, really not able to help myself.
Yeah, and I know you're not alone in feeling that way, and I know many people have felt that way through this very difficult journey. And again, thank you so much for sharing, some of these hard times that you've had to go through. I really appreciate it. I think it's very helpful for people to really understand what this is like. And one more difficult question, and I promise we'll get on a better pasture here. Do you remember like the worst day, or for some people it's not a day, it's a time period. But do you remember like the worst day or time period? And what was that like?
There's a perfect day that comes to mind. And this was actually right after I found out it was mold. I had gone to dinner, or actually it was breakfast with some of my friends. And it was right when we had to start wearing masks. And so I had literally lost my mask like 3 times in the matter of 2 hours. And I remember saying, actually, I was embarrassed because I lost it 3 times and I put it in like a different pocket each time, but I couldn't find it. And I had said to a friend, I'm like, I kind of tried to explain what was going on, but they didn't get it. So I said, I'm taking this, stuff to hopefully help my brain. And she goes, did you forget to take it? And we laughed about it, but I was really like, oh my gosh, people are noticing how bad it is. Where I could kind of hide it, brush it under the rug, certain areas, but that was a really turning point for me of like, I have to take this seriously. So not only do I, need to make sure I know where it's coming from or how I got it. Is it in my house? Is it something, how did I get this? Because it's serious, and, you can kind of brush it off for so long with, the brain fog. But that was really, like, okay, this is happening, and that forgetfulness is serious. Are you gonna? I just assumed it was going to keep getting worse if I didn't take it serious, and I know it would have from talking to other people now.
Yeah, no, it definitely can get worse. I mean, it gets as long as you're exposed, right? You're going
Yep.
to continuously, have these toxins, these particles continuously enter the body, and the body can only really, detoxify so much. So the more you overload, the worse it gets. So I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad that you kind of caught on early on, and were able to do something about this so quickly. And let's talk about that. So when did you finally start to feel better? So, a year and a half ago, you figure out it's mold. So obviously, you had to have done something with that aspect, with the exposure. So kind of catch us up to speed a bit here.
I think I started to feel better um, pretty quickly when figuring out what it was. But it was still a long process of healing from it. And so, I would say I started to feel better in a sense of a couple of months, but it also is not a quick fix. And it also is things that I feel healing, one, we have to eliminate, like you said, where we're getting it from, but then also healing and helping our body detox. And one more thing I did remember is that I was having more food allergies than I, was sensitive to, I guess. And so those things have really helped by slowly going away the more that I heal my body from it. So, it's a process. I would say I started to feel a bit better where I could notice it in a couple of months, but it's still been a long process to really, really feel, I guess, normal again, like my normal self.
Yeah, no, it definitely can be. It can even take years for some people. Just
Right.
depends on, how fast they caught it, what their exposures were, and for some people, obviously different supplements work better for some people than others. So
Right.
there's that kind of that journey of figuring out what works best for you individually. And then, it's having to open up these detoxification pathways that get shut off, and go through that process to start to remove this stuff and really start to feel better again. So, yeah, no, but I'm glad you're on that journey. You've started to make strides, and you're starting to feel more and more like yourself every day. What would you recommend to others who have experienced something similar to you?
I would really recommend to take yourself seriously. And, if you know that you're feeling something different that's not normal, and you've been getting diagnoses from a doctor, and maybe they've put you on, an anti-anxiety medication, or even I know a lot of people depression. For me, I knew it wasn't I knew what it wasn't situational for me. Like I wasn't going through something hard. And so for me, it was like, I know there is something different than, what I'm going through. And so finding somebody who is going to find the root cause of what your symptoms are is so helpful. And so having, a traditional medical doctor is, amazing. But we have to take it a step farther to find the root cause. We have to go back to, really, why are you all of a sudden having anxiety symptoms? Is it something in your life that is causing it? And if not, then it's like, okay, then it must be something deeper in our body. And so never stopping, keep digging, even if 40 doctors call you crazy, you have to keep digging and taking things like this serious. Sharing your story, even if it's scary and hard and you feel really vulnerable, it helps to help other people know that they're not alone. And it helps the doctors who are dealing with, because everybody's symptom is so different, figure out that what testing to do and how we can figure out, what is the cause of it and where it is coming from.
Yeah, no, I thank you so much. And that is really great advice. And, yes, if you could share your story so that other people don't have to suffer, so that doctors get a hold of this and see things, see that it's much more common than we're all led to believe as a society. These are all the things that kind of catalyst this change that's so desperately needed. So yes, thank you for sharing that. I want to thank you for helping me kind of raise awareness around this. I mean, I'm so grateful that you've decided to kind of get on this today and share your story. How can people connect with you if they're looking to connect and, love the fact that you're kind of now using this and empowering yourself to help others that it could be going through similar challenges. So thank you for that. How do people connect with you?
Thank you for having me. It's definitely something that I'm very passionate about and want to share with others, because when you're going through something alone, it makes you feel like there is not hope. So I would say the best way to get a hold of me is through Instagram. Fitness coach Sara is the best way to find me. And, really just thank you for having me and letting me share my story. I know it's not as tough as some other people's, thankfully, but yet I feel like it's such a spectrum that even sharing my piece of it can help people who are just in the beginning stages struggling, or people who have been dealing with it for years and they don't know. Many of our, I feel, conditions and diseases can be traced back to this.
Yeah, no, thank you. And not to belittle you and your story, because I don't want to minimize this one bit, right? You went through challenging times. What one person goes through and another person go through can be totally different, but the feelings that you're experiencing while you're going through it are very real. And so I know how difficult those times have been, and I'm glad you found the answers that you needed to kind of get through this. And, thank you so much for, being vulnerable today and sharing your story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk soon.